Ladies and gentlemen, how you all doing? Hope you're having a fantastic day. So, our next challenger is Olympique Lyon. So, before this game started, this Manchester City versus Olympique Lyon game, I thought to myself, you know what? I think Olympique Lyon will have a good chance. It's a one-off game for starters, and the second thing is that Manchester City, they're not as good as everyone thinks they are. They are a very good team on their day, but they're also a very inconsistent team, as the Premier League has proven this year. Not last year, this year. This year they've been sort of all over the place here and there, not as consistent as they were last season. But also the big factor is Pep Guardiola. Now, everyone that's watched me for a while knows I'm a huge fan of Pep Guardiola. I think what he did at Bayern was fantastic. But the truth is, at the end of the day, that he likes to tinker a little bit too much at the end of the day. And that's the truth. He likes to tinker a little bit too much. Now, I don't want to get too much about, I don't want to talk too much about Pep Guardiola. But I thought before the game, because of those factors, that, you know what? I think there's a good chance we might play against Lyon. And that's exactly what happened. We're playing against Lyon. Now, what I will say about them is that we definitely won't be approaching them the same way that we would, for example, against Manchester City. I think against Manchester City, we would have been a lot more cautious. We would have been a lot more hesitant. We would have been a lot more pragmatic in our approach. I think against Lyon, our approach... I'll get into that, obviously, much more once I do my actual preview for the game. This is just my announcing who we're going to play next and how I think we're going to approach this game before I actually look into it more deeply. But this essentially what I'm feeling is that we're going to approach this game in a very simple manner, and that is to go for the attack. Everyone's been talking about our high line against Barcelona and so on and so forth. Yes, we do play a high line, but yes, we also don't play as high as we did against Barcelona. I think people that don't watch us that often, you know, that don't really look at our team that often, don't really realize that while we do play a high line, we don't play this crazy high line. And that's exactly what I feel like we're going to do as well, because there's going to be a massive focus on attacking. There's going to be a tremendous focus on attacking. Now, since I'm talking about our game against Lyon, let's also talk about the game between, not quite Coca-Cola, but the cans against oil. That's really what it boils down to. PSG versus Leipzig. Here's my thing. I get the sentiment that most Bayern fans have specifically about these two and who would you rather face if we do make it to the final. I won't say that. I'm not saying that we will make it to the final because we still have to beat Lyon. But if we were to make it to the final, who would we rather face out of PSG or Lyon? Out of PSG or Leipzig? I personally would rather face PSG. I would much rather face PSG. PSG has a much weaker defense. And we are just the masters at exploiting poor defenses. That's just kind of what we do. Now, you may say, well, they've got Mbappe, Verratti might be back, Neymar, you know, they've got so much quality on their pitch. And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. But we've played against Leipzig this season multiple times, and we've never beaten them. We've never beaten them this season. Leipzig, I haven't got the stats up right now, but you know what? Just for you lot, I'll find the stats right now. In the Bundesliga this season, Leipzig have, from what I believe, they've had the least losses. Let me have a quick look. Yeah, so they've had 4 losses, which is equal to us. They've had 4, obviously they ended up being in 3rd place with 66 points, 3 points behind Dortmund. But they've had less losses than Dortmund. They just had a lot more draws. So they are a team that is very hard to actually beat in 90 minutes. We didn't manage it. That says a lot. We didn't manage it in both our occasions. We didn't manage to beat them in 90 minutes, from what I remember. So that is something to really keep in mind. That is something to really keep in mind. Like, they're a lot more familiar with us. Nagelsmann is a lot more familiar with us. PSG, they would rely a lot more on their players up front. We'll beat them in midfield, and we'll beat their defense of our attack. So the only thing that we have to neutralize and nullify is their attack. So I'd much rather have that than against a team that is just, that might not be star-studded, but is much better from back to front as a team, as a unit, as a cohesive unit. Now, will I say that Leipzig are going to beat friggin' PSG? I think that game is going to be very, very close. I think Leipzig have a very good shot. I think that game is actually 50-50. I know everyone's saying, well, that's ludicrous. PSG is gonna smack them off the earth. I'm telling you, that game is gonna be very, very close. I think PSG. I think honestly, that game could be a 1-1 draw, and then in extra time, I could see either team win it. To be 100% completely honest, I think people are not really giving Nagelsmann and that Leipzig team the credit that they deserve, because they are a team that doesn't lose. And I think that is very... They've lost as many games as we have in the Bundesliga. And yes, we had Kovac, but they've lost as many games as we have had in the Bundesliga. Keep that in mind. Keep that in mind, alright? So, I think that game's going to be a 1-1 result in full time, and then extra time, you know, that it's going to... I'm honestly leaning slightly towards Leipzig, honestly, like, without like playing favorites or anything. Well, favorites. Favorites. I won't even go into that. Who would you rather win between those? So, like, who would you rather win? That's a difficult one, but I would go with Leipzig, I think. I would go with Leipzig, I think, for two reasons. One, Nagelsmann, and two, I'd much rather have Leipzig. It's like choosing between bad meets evil. But I would rather have Leipzig go through than PSG, just so we can beat Leipzig in the final. I've got good memories with an all-German final. That's all I'm gonna say. But on our end, obviously, we still have to beat Lyon. Let's not underestimate them. I mean, the club is not going to underestimate them, the team is not going to underestimate them, and I hope that the players aren't going to underestimate them. It's going to be interesting to see which approach they're going to use against us, because I feel like they might sit back and try and pick us up from the counter, because I feel like they might do the same mistake that a lot of other people have done who don't watch us as much, which is that they're going to assume that, you know, we're going to be that vulnerable in defense. And while I do think that we were significantly more vulnerable in defense against Barcelona than I would have perhaps liked, I think that was specifically because we moved up so much so that we could press them, because Barcelona is known for just playing out the back. Then they're not known for a team that's really gonna, you know, get the long balls forward. So that's why we could actually move up that fast, and we had the players to track back that fast, which isn't going to be the case against Lyon, because they actually have pacey players. They actually have players that are relatively quick, not lightning quick, but relatively quick. Now, who should play? We'll get into that. We'll get into all that. So Seal will be back in the squad. We'll get into all that, ladies and gentlemen. But I'm looking forward to that game. Obviously, we're only 2 steps away from winning the whole thing against Lyon, and then the final. It's not too much to ask for, 2 games, but we've been plenty of times in this situation, in the semi-finals, and then we've just failed to make that final step. Will that be the case? Absolutely not. We've got Flick, and we've got the best player in the world in Davis. So everything is good, everything is jolly, everything is fantastic. You all know my thoughts already on who, I think there are certain players that are going to be played. That's just the way it is. There are certain players that are going to be starting that game, that everyone knows are going to be starting that game. Those are Lewandowski, obviously, Müller, I would go as far as say Gnabry as well, Davies, of course. Then you've got Kimmich on one side, you've got Thiago, well, actually, is Thiago and Goretzka going to play? Because Tolisso has come back now. So, is that going to be the case? I think Tolisso still hasn't got enough minutes. So, I would still go with Thiago and Goretzka. And then I think Alaba is pretty much set as well. And then Boateng and Coman / Perisic. I think are the 2 players that could be swapped. But I'm not sure whether Flick would want to risk it at this point of the, at this point of the stage where, like, you're 2 games away from winning it all. I don't think he would risk it. I think I'd go with Boateng. He hasn't really disappointed. I thought, in the game against Barcelona, for those that watched my watch along, I thought that he was our only good defender in the first half. But then slowly but surely all the other players got significantly better in the second half, and he obviously had made a mistake in the second half. So I feel like, he was the rock in the first half, but then the other players stepped up and he kind of fell back in the second half. So that was my thought on that game specifically. But yeah, that's what I think. Who's going to have a good game? I think Müller. When Müller has a good game, Bayern has a good game. That's just kind of the philosophy of the club at the moment, honestly. That, like, not just at the moment, honestly, for the last 10 years. Honestly, for the last 10 years, for the last decade, when Muller has a good game, we play good. When Muller has a bad game, or when Muller is not playing, we generally don't play good. And Flick knows that. Flick knows that. So I'm looking forward to that game. I don't think there's anyone that's close to a suspension. I know a few of our players got a yellow card in the last game, but there isn't anyone that's like close to the suspension. And I think as long as we play our game, I think we've got it. As long as we play out, I don't think it's gonna be like a blowout. I don't think it's gonna be like a more than. Alright, I think it's gonna be more than 3 goals, but I don't think it's gonna be more than 4. I know everyone that everyone that doesn't watch us that often now looks at us and like, well, of course you're gonna score like 10 goals. I don't think so at all. It's gonna be a very close game. Like it's gonna be a relatively close game. Of course, our players will be extra motivated, but it's a Champions League semi-final, a one-off knockout game as well. Now we're the masters of one-off knockout game because dear people call, so we're used to that. But it's going to be a very difficult game. It's going to be a very difficult game, and I hope people aren't underestimating them. I know the players won't, and I hope the fans won't either, because they'll be in for a very rude awakening. The reason why I think we're going to score at least 3 goals, I don't know how many they're going to score, granted, but the reason why I think we're going to score at least 3 goals because I think this whole Champions League campaign we haven't had a game where we've not scored at least 3 goals. That's just how lethal we are. And I also want Lewandowski to score 2+ goals in this campaign, just so he's like the top Champions League goal scorer in a single campaign. I kind of want him to break that record, but I don't really care that much for individual record, but just that one. If there's no Ballon d'Or, I want him to have that for him at least, so he can say that he's had a very fantastic campaign. But ladies and gentlemen, that's just the semi-finals. Semi-finals that are coming up soon. Let's just hope we have a good game. Let's hope we have 2 good games, and then at the end of the day, hopefully, very much so, I'm hoping, very much so, that at the end of the day, we have the Champions League trophy, the 6th Champions League trophy in Munich. But there's still a long way to go. Long road to go, and until we are in the final, let's focus on the semi-final. Until we're there, we need to get there first. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I'll see you all in the next one. Everyone, have a nice day. Until next time, peace out and have a nice day. Bye.